On the night of January 3, 2026, the United States intervened in Venezuela. Under the name Operation Absolute Resolve, the United States attacked military targets in northern Venezuela at around 2 a.m. local time. More than 150 aircraft were deployed, and airstrikes hit areas including those around the capital, Caracas. Shortly afterwards, the Venezuelan leadership declared a national emergency. During the operation, President Maduro and his wife were apprehended by United States Special Forces. Both were taken to New York, where the judiciary is now bringing charges against them, which is also related to allegations of narco-terrorism. This brought a long-standing conflict to a resolution not only politically, but also militarily in a very short period of time. Let's examine what this action means, why it was done, and the message it sends to Russia, China, and others. On the American side, several units were involved in this attack. On the side of the United States Army, the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment and the Delta Force Special Forces were directly involved in the mission. They were supported by forces from the United States Marine Corps, the United States Navy, and the United States Air Force. In addition to the armed forces, the CIA and the Drug Enforcement Administration were also involved, along with the FBI's hostage rescue team. So we see quite a large deployment just to be able to carry out this mission, and those were only the active participants on site. In the background, there were many intelligence agencies that played a major role in the preparations. There were two primary directions of attack by the Americans. One from the direction of the United States of America, from where they carried out airstrikes with airplanes, and the other with an amphibious assault ship, namely the United States ship Iwo Jima, from which combat and transport helicopters took off, bringing special forces to Venezuela. For those who don't know, the United States ship Iwo Jima is an amphibious assault ship designed for that purpose, to move troops, vehicles, and equipment from sea to land directly. It serves as a kind of floating base with a large flight deck, mainly used for helicopters, but not for airplanes except for vertical takeoff aircraft. This allows it to support operations even in places where there are no ports or suitable infrastructure, especially near the coast. Its advantage over other warships lies in its versatility. It can transport soldiers, support operations from the air, and serve as a command center at the same time. You can also launch speedboats, landing craft, and vehicles from there. It is ideal for landing operations, ship maneuvers, and coastal missions, and needs fewer crew members than a conventional aircraft carrier. However, it has clear disadvantages compared to a classic aircraft carrier, such as being unable to deploy large fighter jets and having much less air combat power. But its role is not to maintain permanent air superiority over large areas, but rather to provide targeted support for operations on land. So it complements an aircraft carrier, but does not replace it. But for such an operation, it was completely sufficient. In any case, the attack began at around 2 a.m. with the destruction of important facilities. As I mentioned, about 150 aircraft approached from the United States of America, and the ship Iwo Jima was here. From where the special forces started and where all the helicopters were stationed and made ready, they then flew a bit further south towards the city of Caracas. It's right here, near the coast. In the area around the city, both the naval port of La Guaira and the nearby base of the Naval Academy were hit. In the city itself, the Generalissimo Francesco de Miranda Air Base was hit, as well as the Cargigal Observatory and the telecommunications mast near El Volcan. Much further to the east, away from the city and again on the coast, the Higuerote airfield was also hit to prevent possible support. Since all United States soldiers were brought into the city by helicopter, It was extremely important for the United States to urgently avoid any kind of aerial combat. For that reason, the airfields were attacked first. On the other hand, it was also important to stay in the area as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, and above all, for as short a time as necessary. That's why they attacked at night. In order to take out important places like the observatory, which was one of the highest reconnaissance points in the city, as well as the communication antennas in the south of the city, they had to do it. To delay reinforcements as long as possible. In this rather mountainous area, the antennas were set up at one of the highest points, which is why they are used collectively for telecommunications in the region and are indispensable for public safety. It was also necessary to destroy the air defense systems, as they were the main threat to the helicopters. Venezuela invested billions over several years in a modern multi-layered system. The systems were primarily sourced from China and Russia, including long-range radars, long and medium-range air defense missiles, mobile short-range systems, and thousands of portable shoulder-launched rocket launchers, manpads. This created South America's most powerful air defense shield on paper, with Russia even claiming it could protect the continent from Western air threats. Venezuela also spoke in the media of invaluable worth and fantastic capabilities. The expectations were correspondingly high, and yet the United States decided to fly in with aircraft, and did so without any losses. Some parts of the air defense shield could simply be bypassed, and other parts were neutralized, also from the air. It remains unclear how many systems were operational, or if all aircraft could be detected before the facilities were destroyed. After the main threats were neutralized, the helicopters began their approach to the primary area of operation, namely here at the center near Fuerte Tuna. As you can clearly see on the map, the helicopters started their approach from the southeast, basically flew around the mountain range, destroyed important targets, and then flew here toward their area of operation, most likely to avoid the remaining anti-aircraft defenses, which are also clearly visible on the topographic map. Anti-aircraft positions and radar installations are typically high up, but here they moved directly through the valley. The main area of operations also included the military base Fuerte Tuna, which was attacked and heavily damaged. During the approach, the city's power grid was damaged, causing widespread outages. Did this help the Americans? They landed outside Maduro's estate and executed the operation, which internal sources said was months in planning. The 160th Soldiers. The regiment's soldiers had previously practiced the operation in a full-scale replica of his location. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, spoke of months of reconnaissance work as the basis for this operation. They were so fast that Maduro couldn't even make it to the security room. He and his wife were abducted, and from there, they were brought back to the United States ship, Iwo Jima, and from there they went by ship toward Cuba, and from there on to Guantanamo Bay. His wife was abducted, from there to Jima, and from there toward Guantanamo. The fact that the United States Armed Forces managed to capture Maduro in a special operation lasting only 3 hours and 34 minutes, and to get him out of the country unharmed, and without any losses of their own, that caused sheer horror in Russia's anti-aircraft fortress. Russian military bloggers reacted harshly, viewing the events as humiliating for Venezuela and indirectly for Russian arms suppliers. In numerous comments, it was emphasized that there was not a single interception or shoot-down, thousands of man-portable air defense systems were practically ineffective, and United States helicopters were able to move over Caracas as if they were at a shooting range, since they could attack targets and then withdraw without interference. Many observers found this highly suspicious both militarily and politically. Most Russian forums and professional portals agreed that the United States' success was due less to technological superiority and more to the total paralysis of Venezuela's defense system. Again and again, reference was made to a lack of motivation, missing fighting spirit, and an alleged internal collapse of the military and political elites. Some commentators even went so far as to speak of bribery and deliberate inaction by the command structures. Additionally, it was emphasized that Venezuela, despite having modern Russian and Chinese air defense systems, does not possess any modern early warning aircraft or any fighter jets to credibly operate an integrated defense system. However, there are existing Sukhoi 30 MKV aircraft from Russian production, but technologically they were not on par with the United States Special Forces. So they want to show as best as possible that it wasn't the systems that failed, but rather the Venezuelans, who always used them incorrectly, too late or not at all, according to Russian bloggers. But one thing is clear: if the United States had the opportunity to bring a government loyal to Washington to power, then they would secure access to many Russian systems that have been integrated into the arsenal of the Venezuelan armed forces. They would gain access to air defense systems Russia still uses in the Ukraine war, which are the backbone of Russian air defenses. Such systems are also stationed in Iran, which would interest the United States. Russian bloggers also feel strong pressure to justify themselves. Russia has been waging a major war for years, investing heavily in people, equipment, and money, but making little strategic progress. And all of this started as a quickly planned special operation, where, just like in Venezuela, they wanted to overthrow the government, only with the difference that Russia failed to achieve its political goals and make quick decisions. And instead, they switched to a war of attrition with heavy losses. And then those same observers see how the United States was able to achieve in just a few hours exactly what Russia has failed to do despite years of effort. A clearly defined political goal was implemented precisely, completed, and above all, carried out quickly. The claim that everything was just bribery and due to internal decay seems like a kind of self-reassurance, as if to say anyone could have done it if they just had enough money. But this is exactly where the denial lies. Bribery alone doesn't explain a perfectly timed attack, effective coordination, smooth exfiltration, and above all of it without any losses. Zelensky was asked for his thoughts on the situation. He replied that only when the United States of America deals with dictators this way do they know their next steps. What also becomes clear is something that goes far beyond Venezuela. Putin has in fact lost his role as a protector of dictators. Those who used to be able to rely on Moscow, whether militarily, politically, or at least as a last refuge, can no longer do so today, not even symbolically. Seeking refuge in Moscow is no longer reliable. Russia has not only tied up military resources and lost international credibility, but also lost an important asset in foreign policy: reliability. Security guarantees and assurances were only given to Venezuela in October, along with a strategic partnership, which was also negotiated then. All of that is worthless again. So if you look at this operation objectively, it quickly becomes clear that this was not an improvised strike, but rather a textbook example of how modern Western military logic works. You can clearly see the difference between the old cumbersome way of thinking and today's precise approach. While other states have tried to eliminate political leadership through mass, speed, and hope for collapse with known results, here, exactly the opposite was done: discreetly, focused, prepared within a tight time frame, and above all, very quickly. The decisive factor wasn't troop numbers, but months of reconnaissance, planning, leadership, and technical support. Few forces, but exactly at the right place, at the right time, with a clearly defined objective. That is precisely where the superiority of Western tactics lies. Not because Western weapons are superior or better, but because they are part of a doctrine that has focused for decades on integration, flexibility, and above all, decision-making freedom at lower levels. Identify main ideas, condense supporting details, remove redundancy, maintain original perspective and meaning, ensure grammatical accuracy. Translate it. This leads to the next one. Weapon systems are neutral. They're made for a specific way of thinking, leading, and fighting. Assistant UPS, greater than text. If you meet the eligibility requirements, you will be contacted via email with instructions on how to proceed. Assistant short response provided. Systems that have emerged from Soviet-influenced concepts, even when modernized, still carry this logic within them. A switch to a completely different military way of thinking is therefore extremely difficult. You can buy technology, but not culture, not training, and not a tradition of leadership. overnight. However, the political dimension behind it is at least just as relevant. Authoritarian states have long tried to undermine open societies from within. It's not even about classic ideology, but about destabilization. Extreme positions are promoted, divisions are intensified, and trust in institutions is systematically undermined. Whether this happens from the right, the left, or under the political guise of supposed morality is secondary. It's interesting that this strategy can backfire on its creator. Those who try to gain influence by promoting chaos often lose control. Suddenly, actors no longer act in someone else's interest, but strictly in their own. The result is strategic unpredictability, and in the end, weakness instead of influence. But what happens next? The United States wants to form a transitional government in Venezuela before court proceedings against Maduro because of the drug war and benefit from it. Venezuela, near the United States, holds the world's largest crude oil reserves. This allows them to bring the black gold directly into their country via a short import route and benefit economically and strategically from this source. A pro-United States government would be very suitable for that. In Trump's speech after the arrest, almost every other sentence was about oil and not about the liberation of the Venezuelan people or the Europeans. This affected many, especially the Middle East and Russia, since the United States can save money this way and theoretically push prices down, which also forces the others to keep up. And this in countries that live only from oil and were used to a price of $80 to $90 per barrel and had calculated with that price. Thank you to all subscribers, Algo Crew channel members, and special thanks to Oberschleuder Drenica, Robert Siller, Dietrich Freddy, and Mayor Hofer. Subscribe, like, comment, and see you next video.